Okay, comparable calls. This is this was the concept that was introduced in our laws of 2017, having to do with replacement calls when there's a pass or a bid out of turn, insufficient bid replacements, those situations. So Law 23 talks about our definitions and concepts for a comparable call. The purpose of the law is that prior to comparable calls, we had auctions that were greatly affected because partner was now barred for the remainder of the auction when we made some kind of a mistake of bidding out of turn. And so the goal is always to get a bridge result. And sometimes the infraction that has happened does not have an effect. We can allow a correction without there being any more information, and we can get to a true bridge result, which is really what we're trying to do. So a call that replaces a withdrawn call is comparable. And we have three different filters that we use when determining if a call is comparable. The first filter is has the same or similar meaning. The second is that it defines a subset. And the third is that it has the same purpose. You can see that these are separated by the word or. So these are three different filters that stand alone. We don't combine these definitions when we're trying to determine if a call is comparable. We just take these one at a time to determine if this filter would allow us to allow a correction, what it would be that would allow a penalty-free auction. So 23A1 talks about same or similar meaning. This means similar strength and similar distribution. So we're going to kind of look at some examples here. East deals, South opens one heart out of rotation, which is not accepted. And now East opens one spade. Would two hearts here be a comparable call? We have a mixed bag of people coming in. So under our definition of similar strength, similar values, similar distribution, two hearts, although you might not have exactly an opening call, it's similar. People are not going to bid two hearts with a 6 count. They're going to have a near opening or an opening hand, and they're going to have 5+ hearts. So the important thing that we do when we're determining if a call is comparable is we want to look at the initial call, which was 1 heart, and what information did that bid contain. So 1 heart showed an opening hand with 5+ hearts. So 2 hearts here would be allowed as comparable. Our next example is that East deals, South opens a heart out of rotation, not accepted, and East now opens 1 diamond. Would 1 heart here be comparable? So the answer is we have to go back. Would 1 heart by South always show an opening hand when we overcall 1 diamond? Would we ever overcall 1 heart with a 6 count or an 8 count, a hand that we would not open? We would. And so although some people might have an opening hand when they overcall a heart, they don't guarantee that. And for it to be comparable, it would have to, in their system, show an opening hand with hearts. And so here, we would not allow this bid as comparable. So now North has dealt and South has opened in front of their partner 1 heart. So this is different. We're not opening in front of our right-hand opponent now. We're actually opening in front of our partner. Not accepted, which means it's canceled. So what happens when the bid is canceled is at that time, I explain it like there's this cloud of unauthorized information that has now come and rested over the table. So when South does this and is not accepted, we now have a cloud of unauthorized information that is coming and hovering over the table that we're going to have to deal with. So what we do is we say to North, you're allowed to make any call that you would like without the knowledge that your partner opened a heart. That is not authorized information for you. I'd like you to bid your hand normally. And then when we get to your partner, we will determine at that time whether he has a call that he's going to be able to make that's going to allow a penalty-free auction. If he does, then the auction will proceed normally from there. And if not, you're going to be required to pass at your next opportunity. But for now, we want you to go ahead and start the auction as you normally would have without this information. Okay? So let's say he opens, North opens. I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and talk about this. One diamond, pass, now one heart. Is one heart here a comparable call? It's definitely forcing, but it would not be comparable because it does not show an opening hand with hearts. So in this situation, their partner would be barred for the next round of bidding. Now, if they played strong jump shifts, two hearts would be comparable here. We would allow that over one diamond, but not many people play those anymore. So in this situation, though, it would not be deemed as comparable. Now, let's say North deals, South opens a heart out of rotation, which is not accepted. And now North opens one heart. Would we allow two no trump Jacoby as comparable? So all of you are getting this one right, and the answer is yes. Although it's not the same, two no trump generally shows 4 plus, a fit with 4 plus hearts. It doesn't necessarily show 5. But in this example it shows an opening hand, a hand going to game with heart support. So we would allow this as comparable. So East deals, South opens 2 spades out of rotation, showing spades and a minor. 6 to 10 high card points, which is not accepted. One heart, East opens one heart. And now the question is 2 spades a comparable call? How about 3 spades? 3 spades would be a comparable call. So in these situations, again, we have to go back to what South originally showed with their 2 spade bid. 2 spades out of rotation, it showed spades and a minor with a specific point count of 6 to 10. So 2 spades overcall would be a weak 2 with spades. It doesn't guarantee another suit, a minor. 3 spades here would just show more spades. We have to have, for it to be comparable, it has to contain all the information that was in the original bid. Someone might say, what about 2 hearts, right? Michael's. Well, this does show spades and a minor, but does Michael specifically show 6 to 10 high card points? Unlikely. Most people play, people play this all different ways. It could be an opening hand, it could be bigger than an opening hand or less than an opening hand. But in this situation, we would not be able to deem this as comparable because although it shows the 2 suits, it doesn't show the specific range. So these are the things that you have to take into consideration as you are making your ruling, making your decision. So although for a subset, now we're looking at 23A2, although the legal call might not have the same meaning, it provides more precise information than the withdrawn call. So here is kind of a drawing to try to explain what we're talking about. So the big circle is the hands that would have made the withdrawn call, and the blue oval represents a subset of those calls. The orange circle, this is a call that might fit into the original bid, but it doesn't necessarily. So this is what we're looking at when we're talking about a subset. So here's some examples. Consider a withdrawn call that showed 5+ hearts and 10 to 20 points. So that's what our original call showed, 5+ hearts, 10 to 20 points. So now would we allow calls showing 6 hearts and 16 to 20 points? What about calls that show 5 hearts, 4 clubs, and 10 to 15? And then the last example is calls that show 5 hearts and a 5-card minor and 10 to 15. So what we're looking for when we talk about subsets, again, if we go back here, so our, let me see if I can annotate this, and my drawing is never good here, so I apologize. So here's our original bid, which was 5+ hearts and 10 to 20 high card points. Okay, 5+ hearts and 10 to 20 points. If I had 6 hearts and 16 to 20, does the 6 hearts, does that fit in with 5+ hearts? It does. And does 16 to 20 fit in with 10 to 20 high card points? It does. So 6 hearts and 16 to 20 would be some kind of subset of this here. It's a more defined, it's more defined. It's showing more hearts, but it's showing 5+ hearts and somewhere in the point range. For the second example, calls that show 5 hearts and 4 clubs, same thing. It shows 5 hearts, it's in the point range, but it also shows clubs. So it's more specific, but it still would be a subset. And then calls showing 5 hearts and a 5-card minor with 10 to 15. Again, it's giving us all of the information that was included in the original bid, and that's our standard for deciding if something is a subset. So all of these examples, let's see how I can. So I can erase all my stuff here. Okay, so all of these examples are subsets. Now let's consider some other examples. Consider a withdrawn call showing 5+ hearts and 10 to 20 points. Calls showing hands with 4 hearts. Or calls showing 6 hearts and 6 to 10 points. So neither of these would be subsets. This one doesn't show the number of hearts, and this one doesn't show the correct point range. So these are different bids than what was originally shown in the first bid. So these are not subsets. All right. East deals, South opens 2 diamonds out of rotation multi, showing a weak 2 in either major, 6 to 10 high card points not accepted. So 2 diamonds shows a weak 2 in either major. Now, East opens a diamond and South bids 2 spades. Would this be comparable? You guys are doing so well. Why are you here for this class? The answer is yes. The reason being is their original bid, the 2 diamond multi, showed a weak 2 in a major. So now over 1 diamond, 2 spades shows a weak 2 spade. It shows you what the major was. And so we would allow 2 spades as a correction to allow a penalty-free auction here. South passes out of rotation. Not accepted. So they've passed in front of their partner. 1 heart pass, South's turn up. So would we allow 2 hearts as a comparable call here? How about 1 no trump as a comparable call? And 2 clubs. So 2 hearts would be comparable. It would definitely be, what we're looking for is any hand that would make this call would have been a hand that would have passed originally. And so when we talk to South away from the table, after North opens 1 heart, you would take South away from the table and you would say, what is it that you're thinking about bidding? And they'll say, well, I want to bid a heart, or I want to bid 2 hearts, excuse me, or I want to bid a no trump. So those calls are all calls that would limit their hand to a hand that would have passed originally. And so that would be determined as comparable and the auction would continue normally. With the example of 2 clubs though, this is not. Someone may say, well, we don't play 2 over 1, we play standard American. And so 2 clubs could be 10 points. And that's the could be, that's the issue. Because 2 clubs could be 10 doesn't guarantee 10. And what we have to guarantee is a hand that would have passed originally. And a hand that would bid 2 clubs here may not be a hand that would pass always. It may be an opening hand. And so that's why we cannot allow 2 clubs as comparable. Okay. And then the last filter that we use is same purpose. These are a little bit easier to understand. Asking bids or relays, the legal call asks the same questions as the withdrawn call. So let's look at some of those. North deals and opens 2 no trump, East passes. South bids 2 clubs insufficiently, thinking their partner had opened a no trump. 2 clubs would have been stamen over 1 no trump. Will we allow 3 clubs? So we would allow 3 clubs. What if they play puppet? Does that change our thinking? Are we still going to allow it if 3 clubs is puppet? Still okay. That's correct. Because it's okay, because what 2 clubs was doing was asking about your holding in the majors. 3 clubs is asking about your holding in the majors. Whether or not it's a 5 or a 4 card major, we don't care. It's still a subset because it's still asking the same question. So this is the trap of mixing our definitions. We don't want to mix our definitions here. Okay. So the situation is that East opened a club in front, and now it's not accepted in front of their right-hand opponent, and their right-hand opponent bids 1 spade. Okay. So in a tournament, the staff got this wrong. They thought that among hands that would open one club is a subset that would have 4 hearts. So they thought that double was okay, double was comparable. But the problem is that all hands that would double here would not necessarily open a club. Hands that double sometimes have no clubs and they have a very strong heart suit. So they're going to double and originate their hand. So all hands that would double would not be hands that would open a club. And so we cannot mix our definitions to allow a double here as comparable. Okay. So when a call is ruled comparable, the auction and play continues without further rectification. There is no unauthorized information. You know, I talked about how when someone does something like this at the table in front of their partner, this cloud comes and rests over the table, and it's unauthorized information. And it stays there until the offender makes their replacement bid. When they make the replacement bid and it's comparable, that cloud goes away. And with it goes unauthorized information, lead restrictions, all that stuff goes away. But if it's come to rest because of what they've done, and when they make their replacement call, it is not deemed comparable, that cloud is going to stay for the remainder of the hand, which means the remainder of the auction in hand, which means there is unauthorized information. It means that the first time their partner is on lead, there will be lead restrictions available to the declarer to choose from if they want to do that. We're gonna talk about those lead restrictions here in a little bit. But that's just a way for you to think about it. When a comparable call is not able to be made, this cloud stays and there are lead restrictions and there is unauthorized information throughout. Okay. So here are some tips for the director. Determining the meaning of the withdrawn call. So you always want to get up to speed. Find out, take the person away from the table. It may be obvious to you what their call out of rotation is, but they may have made a conventional call that you're not familiar with. So you want to take them away from the table to find out what their bid on the table meant, so that then you can determine as the auction proceeds what may or may not be comparable. Asking questions correctly. So when you take them away from the table and you're trying to find out about their system, you're trying to find out about what call they're wanting to make as a replacement call, we don't make suggestions for them. We don't help them come up with something that's comparable. So we can answer questions. What I typically do is I say, what are you thinking about bidding? And they will tell me. And then they'll tell me what they're thinking about bidding. And I can say then, okay, well, that would be comparable. That will allow a penalty-free auction. And we'll go back to the table and I'll explain to the table that the choice that they're about to make is a call that we have deemed as one that will allow a penalty-free auction. It shows the same values, or whatever reason it is that we're accepting this call. Or I'll say to them away from the table, well, you're allowed to make that bid, but you need to understand that your partner is going to be required to pass their next opportunity. And if y'all end up on defense, there's going to be lead restrictions on your partner the first time they're on lead. So these are things you want to be sure that the players are all aware of. So once they say, well, I want to just pass. Okay, you're allowed to pass. Your partner's going to pass their next opportunity. So we go and we give the table all of that information. Okay. And then making sure everybody knows what happens next. So you may or may not want to go into all the lead restrictions that are available. When someone does not choose a comparable call and you say, okay, well, their partner's going to have to pass their next opportunity. And the first time they're on lead, if they are defenders, there will be lead restrictions. I can go into those now, or we can wait and see what happens in the auction, and I can tell you about that at that time. So you can kind of give them that option if they want to hear all that information right now, because they may not end up on defense. I mean, the offenders may not end up on defense, and you may just be giving them a whole lot of more information than anybody really wants to hear. So comparable calls, non-offending side damage, law 23C. Why does this section exist? Well, this is not here because we as directors decide to let something slide because we think, oh, it doesn't really matter, or we'll let it play out and see how it goes, and I can always adjust the score. That's not what this section of the law is for. This section of the law is very specific. It has to do with things that happen that you did not foresee happening. So a bad result does not necessarily invoke this section of the law, because just because this happened does not mean that the offenders have to have a bad result. It has to be, there has to be a link to the call, the comparable call that was allowed, that then caused damage to the non-offending side, gave an advantage to the offenders. So the link, so for example, we can talk about the link where I opened in front of my partner one heart, and now my partner opened a heart, was not accepted. My partner opened a heart, and I bid Jacoby 2 no trump. Okay, showing by agreement 4+ hearts and an opening hand, game going in hearts. Now that we ruled that as comparable, but if for some reason this side now, because North now knows that I had 5+ hearts and has asked for aces, we're missing the queen, but he now knows I have a 5th heart, and it may change his analysis, and he goes ahead and bids 6 hearts where nobody in the field is bidding 6 hearts in a normal auction without that information. That's where this type of a example of where 23C would apply. So there would have to be a link.